Military alliances are usually sold to the public as friendships between nations, built on shared values and mutual defense. But that explanation only scratches the surface. If alliances were really about loyalty or ideology, most of them would have collapsed long ago. In reality, alliances exist for a far colder reason: control. Today, we're breaking down what military alliances are actually designed to do and why they shape wars long before the first shot is fired. If you like deep dives into military strategy and modern warfare, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment, because this is where things get interesting. Military alliances are often explained in simple moral terms: shared values, mutual defense, standing shoulder to shoulder against common threats. This framing is comforting, intuitive, and politically useful. It presents alliances as relationships built on trust and collective responsibility. But that explanation is incomplete and in many cases misleading. The real purpose of military alliances is not friendship. It is power management. Alliances exist to shape behavior, control escalation, restrain both enemies and allies, and structure the international system in ways that favor the strongest members. They are not emotional commitments. They are strategic instruments designed to reduce uncertainty and impose order on a dangerous world. To understand alliances properly, you have to stop thinking about them as shields and start thinking about them as systems. From the outside, alliances look defensive. From the inside, they function as mechanisms of control. The most influential military alliance in modern history is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, commonly known as NATO. It is typically described as a defensive pact created to protect Western Europe from Soviet expansion during the Cold War. That description is accurate but incomplete. NATO was not created solely to deter the Soviet Union. It was created to solve multiple strategic problems at once. First, it permanently anchored the United States to European security, preventing a return to American isolationism after World War II. Second, it prevented Western European states from rearming independently in ways that could destabilize the continent. Third, it centralized military planning and decision-making under U.S. leadership. In other words, NATO was designed to manage allies just as much as adversaries. This is not unique to NATO. It is how alliances work. All alliances have hierarchies. Some members contribute more resources, some assume more risk, and some wield more influence. Equality is rarely the goal, stability is. Stronger states use alliances to lock in influence and shape the strategic environment. Weaker states join alliances to borrow power and security they cannot generate alone. But borrowed power always comes with constraints. When a country joins a military alliance, it does not simply gain protection. It gives up autonomy. Its defense planning, procurement decisions, and escalation thresholds become tied to the alliance framework. Independent action becomes politically and strategically costly. This is why alliances are powerful tools of restraint. Contrary to popular belief, alliances often reduce reckless behavior by smaller member states. Once inside an alliance, unilateral action risks dragging in other members, which creates pressure to act cautiously. Alliance politics impose discipline. This is especially visible in alliances with formal mutual defense commitments. NATO's Article 5 is often portrayed as an automatic trigger for war, but in practice it functions as a brake. It forces consultation, deliberation, and collective decision-making. The response to an attack is intentionally ambiguous. That ambiguity allows flexibility, calibration, and escalation control. It deters adversaries by threatening collective response, while restraining allies by limiting impulsive action. Strategic ambiguity is not a flaw, it is a feature. Alliances thrive on uncertainty. They want adversaries to fear worst-case scenarios while allowing internal flexibility. This balance between deterrence and control is the core function of alliances in modern warfare. During the Cold War, alliances took on an additional role: nuclear management. Once nuclear weapons entered the equation, unrestricted sovereignty became dangerous. If every state pursued independent nuclear deterrence, the risk of miscalculation would skyrocket. Alliances provided an alternative. Through extended deterrence, nuclear-armed states could protect allies without encouraging widespread nuclear proliferation. Nuclear decision-making was centralized rather than fragmented. This was never just about protection. It was about preventing allies from seeking independent nuclear capabilities that could destabilize the system. This logic still applies today. Alliances are one of the main reasons nuclear proliferation has occurred more slowly than early theorists predicted. They act as substitutes for sovereign strategic weapons programs. Modern alliances have evolved beyond static defense agreements. They are now interoperability engines. Modern warfare is not defined by individual platforms. It is defined by networks, data links, intelligence sharing, logistics chains, command structures, and joint doctrine matter as much as firepower. Alliances standardize these systems across multiple nations. They allow forces to deploy together faster, share intelligence in real time, and sustain operations over extended periods. They enable coordination across land, sea, air, cyber, and space domains. At the same time, interoperability creates dependency. Once a military is deeply integrated into alliance systems, leaving becomes extraordinarily costly. Equipment, training, doctrine, and communications are aligned with the alliance. Independence becomes expensive and risky. This is another hidden function of alliances: lock-in. Alliances shape long-term strategic alignment by making alternatives unattractive. This is why alliances often persist long after the original threat disappears. After the Cold War ended, NATO did not dissolve. Instead, it expanded. That expansion was not driven by sentiment or charity. It was driven by power logic. By expanding eastward, NATO extended its security architecture. It absorbed new states into its framework. It prevented the emergence of alternative regional security systems. From the perspective of many Eastern European states, NATO membership represented security and political anchoring. From Russia's perspective, it represented encroachment. This highlights another reality of alliances. They stabilize the inside while destabilizing the outside. Alliances draw lines. They clarify who is protected and who is not. That clarity deters some conflicts while intensifying others. It reduces ambiguity for members while increasing pressure on outsiders. This is not accidental. Alliances are tools of strategic signaling. They communicate red lines without spelling out enforcement mechanisms. That ambiguity keeps adversaries cautious while reassuring members. In the Indo-Pacific, this logic is playing out again. The United States maintains a network of bilateral and multilateral alliances. These alliances are often discussed in terms of deterring China. They also serve to manage allied behavior and coordinate regional strategy. By anchoring security through alliances, the United States limits independent arms races. It creates a coherent strategic network rather than a collection of isolated actors. At the same time, alliances allow power projection without territorial conquest. This is the modern model of influence. Not empire through occupation, but influence through networks. Military alliances allow dominant powers to shape the international order. They share costs, distribute risk, and maintain legitimacy through collective action. But alliances are not frictionless. Every crisis tests alliance credibility. Every conflict exposes internal disagreements, burden-sharing disputes, and divergent priorities. This is why alliance cohesion often matters more than raw military capability. An alliance that hesitates, fractures, or sends mixed signals invites challenge. An alliance that responds decisively reinforces deterrence. Even if the response is limited or symbolic, internal politics matter. Disputes over defense spending, readiness, and strategic priorities are not side issues. They go to the heart of alliance credibility. When members underinvest in their own defense, they shift risk onto others, eroding trust over time. At the same time, alliance leaders must balance pressure with cohesion. Push too hard and the alliance fractures. Push too softly and free riding grows. This balancing act is one of the most difficult challenges in alliance management. Leadership is central. Every alliance has a leader, whether acknowledged or not. That leader sets strategic direction, defines threats, and bears disproportionate responsibility when things go wrong. Leadership costs money, attention, and credibility, but it also delivers influence. The ability to convene allies, shape agendas, and define acceptable behavior is one of the most powerful forms of modern statecraft. This is why great powers continue to invest in alliances even when unilateral action might be faster or simpler. Acting alone is quicker. Alliances are slower. But alliances are more legitimate, more durable, and more strategically shaping over time. They transform raw power into structured order. So when people ask why military alliances still matter, the answer is not simply defense. Alliances deter adversaries without constant war. They restrain allies without direct coercion. They prevent arms races through integration. They extend influence without occupation. They shape the international system in predictable ways. They are not about loyalty. They are about control, credibility, and long-term advantage. And as long as power exists in international politics, military alliances will remain one of the most effective ways to manage it. Because the real purpose of military alliances is not to fight wars. It is to prevent the wrong wars at the wrong time under the wrong conditions, while ensuring that if war does come, it happens on terms that favor the alliance. That is why alliances endure.